Hello, good morning, you guys. My name is Nate. I am the lead pastor of the Front Church. This is Rose. Should be taken from me momentarily. But I just wanted to say welcome to the Front Church. And before we get into the message this morning, I just kind of want to give you a picture of where we are and where we're headed. So right now as a Front Church, we are in our preseason. And we define the preseason as anything that is happening prior to getting the green light to have large gatherings in a post-COVID-19 world. And so that green light to have large gatherings in a post-COVID-19 world, that's coming soon, actually. We're gonna have our grand opening later this year in September. But until then, we've been in our preseason, so things just look a little different. We've had to face things in a little different. This auditorium looks a little different now than it's going to look when we do our season. We're going to set things up a little differently. The area that you walk through to get all the way over here, it's not just going to be a barren wasteland over there anymore. We're going to turn that into a cafe where people come in, they can grab their coffee. And then down that hallway, right now we just have, the kid front space is really fun that we have set up right now. But our goal at the Front Church is that your kids leave crying. Not because they had an awful time, but because they never want to leave. And so we're going to outfit that space to the summit. So we're going to turn that into a kid front worship rally, where kids hear about Jesus in age-appropriate ways, and then after they sing some songs and hear an exciting story, then they'll break off into age-appropriate classrooms and hear about Jesus there too. So that's where we're headed, but this is where we are right now. And I just also want to encourage you guys, next week is Easter, and this is a perfect time to invite your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your classmates, your family to church. We're designing the whole experience next week to be an experience for people who are from another tradition or who are not a part of church or maybe even particularly religious. We want them to leave saying, I want to know more about Jesus. That's our goal. And so invite your friends. This morning, Chasen, you come on up. Chasen is going to be giving the message this morning, and he's going to get set up, and he is doing us a huge favor. You guys are going to be so blessed by Chasen. He is the director at Intervarsity on the campus of the University of Utah, and I had the privilege of flying to Detroit this week and then driving the U-Haul and the trailer all the way back here, and then doing our big Farmers and Families food giveaway yesterday. I'm a little tired. And so I knew that was going to be coming, and I could trust this guy. So you guys are going to be blessed to hear from Chasen. But give it up for Chasen. Give him a warm, the Front Church welcome.
Well, hello. Like Nate said, my name is Chasen Robbins. I am a Utah native. I am from Clinton, Utah. And if you don't know where that is, you're like any other regular Utahn, so don't worry. It's in Davis County. And I grew up with a non-religious background. So Nate texted me. He said, hey, can you speak on Palm Sunday? And my automatic first thought was, what the heck is that? And he's like, well, like Palm Sunday. I'm like, there is, like you can see right there, there is only sagebrush. I don't know, would you want me to get a palm leaf? Is that like a common thing in Minnesota? I don't think so. I don't know if you had any in Detroit. But Palm Sunday is documenting Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. So if you look at here, I think this is a 6th or 7th century, go back one slide, 6th or 7th century Eastern Orthodox icon. That's why everybody's so sad, because if you grew up in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, you're sad for some reason. I'm just kidding. I don't know anybody that's Eastern Orthodox. I probably shouldn't say that then. But before we get into this, I would just love to pray for soft hearts. King Jesus, thank you so much for this wonderful time to be here in Bluffdale. Thank you so much for these wonderful people. And please bless our hearts to receive your word. So if you flip to your Bible, and you can, Luke 19, the NIV or the ESV might label it Jesus' triumphal entry. And it's playing on a thing there that would happen in Greco-Roman culture, that there was a triumph. Whenever a battle was won, whenever they enslaved another foreign people, the Romans, they would come in with these great military bounties. They would have slaves, they'd have a lot of captives behind them, and they'd have a lot of money that they stole. But this is Jesus' triumphal entry, and I would love if we could just look at this image. We have the disciples behind him raising their hands, trying to interpret what Jesus is doing. And then we have the Pharisees, or religious leaders, in front of him, arguing about what is happening in Jerusalem. And then we have these poor people laying down cloaks so Jesus' donkey or colt can walk on them. This is not a very triumphal entry. This is not what Romans or Greeks would have thought of. This is lowly, this is poor, this is low class. And the second thing is, I'd love if maybe we could not use the word triumph and maybe not use the word Palm Sunday. I know it's traditional, but what if we use the word parade? Think of parades in our culture. Think of if you're a parent and you take your kids to parades, or if you've ever been to one, there's usually candy, like firefighters are there. Santa is there for some reason. Even though it's like July, Santa was always there. Why? I don't know. Just trying to, probe Christmas in July for some reason. But we have the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade that happens, right? So we have characters like Snoopy, or we have characters like SpongeBob, or there's performances, there's bands. And parades do a couple of things. When we think about parades in history, parades reveal what our culture desires, right? They reveal that our culture wants to be happy, that our culture wants to laugh, that our culture likes to see music and celebrations and sounds and music. But they also reveal what our culture wants us to desire. Parades shape us and say, you want this, right? Think of Verizon or T-Mobile or ExxonMobil that buys a float that has their name on it. It is to support and it is to celebrate, but it's to say, hey, don't you want this wireless plan that has 5G all across the nation, but somehow it doesn't reach Bluffdale, Utah, because nobody cares about Utah? That's what parades do. They reveal what we want, what our culture desires, but then they also reveal what our culture wants us to desire. And they do a third thing. So up on the screen, you're going to see Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and Peter Criss. And if you don't know who these people are, it's probably because you were born in the 2000s and not in the 80s, and you didn't grow up with a dad who loved heavy metal that wasn't that good. But Gene Simmons is a famous singer and lead bassist, by the way, for a band called Kiss. Kiss is a 1970s, 1980s rock band, and they would always do a thing called the Kiss Parade. They show up at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I got so excited. It was so cool to see my celebrities up on stage. I loved Gene Simmons. He was a music mogul for young people. He's like Donald Glover. So he was my king, he was my prophet, and man, he would bring me peace whenever I would listen to Detroit Rock City. I love Gene Simmons so much that I'm the guy on the left. I would dress up as Gene Simmons every year for Halloween. You can see I wore a Kiss belt buckle. I wore a Kiss shirt that was obviously way too tight because I wanted my pre-adolescent pecs to stick out. And then I would paint my face and I would stick out my tongue. And guess what? I still have a tongue that long. Are you ready? Nate told me I could do this. Well, he's not here right now, so it doesn't matter. But yeah. I don't even need to say anything else about the sermon, right? Because I already did that. But I love Gene Simmons because parades, what do they say? They reveal what our culture desires. It reveals what our culture wants us to desire. But then it shows us who we're becoming. Parades that have Snoopy and SpongeBob and big businesses say American culture is happy and laughter and not serious. It's celebratory. It's a little bit of artistic on the side, but it's mainly big business. So what did parades look like in Jesus' day? We have what's called a Roman triumph, and Roman triumphs look a lot like Emmanuel Macron's parade. Emmanuel Macron did this parade in France a couple years ago. This is a big display of military power, right? We have weapons, we have tanks, we have soldiers. This was in response to a gas riot. France was doing gas taxes, so they would up the taxes, right? A lot of people got mad. So what did France show back? Look at us. We have tanks that we had to fill with very expensive gas. And parades in Jesus' day didn't look all that different. This is called a Roman triumph. Julius Caesar actually had 7 triumphs. He fought 7 battles, and he forced everybody to put on a parade for him. He would say, hey, put on this parade. We're going to have lots of women, we're going to have lots of slaves, we're going to have lots of horses, lots of chariots, lots of purple, lots of jewels, and everybody's going to know how great I am because I'm Caesar and I went and killed it in Macedonia, I went and killed it in North Africa, and then I went and killed it in Gaul. Literally, he killed people. He created a mass genocide, right? This is what Julius Caesar did. And he wanted everybody around the world to know about it. Here's what I think before we get into the text, what's really interesting about Jesus' parade. Usually in parades are thrown by other people. They're thrown by other people to celebrate what that person has already done. Julius Caesar's parade is supposed to be celebrating him conquering the Gauls, enslaving the Gauls, right? Jesus' parade is thrown by himself. He orchestrates it. And Jesus' parade is celebrating what he will do. We usually don't throw parades for what somebody's going to do because we don't know if they're going to follow through on their promise. But Jesus does, and we'll see that next week. So let's jump into the passage. As Jesus approached Bethpage and Bethany at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples ahead, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' just say the Lord needs it." Don't we wish we could do that, right? We could go up to a Volvo on the street and be like, "Jesus needs it." For me, I wish it was like a Toyota Sienna. I'm not trying to say anything about mine and Kelly's marital status right now, but man, I want a minivan. They're sweet. The Lord needs it. Those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. And they were untying the colt. Its owners, notice this right here. This colt has multiple owners. It's probably a shared colt. Its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" And they replied, "The Lord needs it." They bring it back to Jesus. They threw their cloaks on the colt and put Jesus on it. So, there's some things we have to notice about these verses. Some of us think it's just a donkey that Jesus rode in. Colt and donkey can be used simultaneously because of further Greek in the past. But there is something significant about this colt. It's never been ridden before. It's never been broken. It might have been wild. It might have not wanted to be sat on. But when Jesus sits on it, it brings the colt peace. But it's also a reference to Yahweh in the Old Testament. Yahweh can only take pure and perfect and unused sacrifices. Jesus is giving people a hint of who he is when he picks up a colt that has never been broken before. But then there's this idea that Jesus said, "Go ahead, pick up a donkey, pick up a colt, and everything will follow just as I say." This was common in Jerusalem in this time. People would give rabbis colts or donkeys to ride in. They might even give them a little bit of food. That's going to happen at the Last Supper in a couple of days from this event. But Jesus says everything exactly how it's going to happen. He speaks into his disciples' lives, and he reveals about himself that he is a prophet. Jesus is a prophet. And when we think of a prophet, we might think of Isaiah or Ezekiel, or we might think of really scary street preachers, or we might think of a horrible boss, or a bad spouse, or kids that yell at you, or teachers. This is our idea of a prophet. And I want to correct that. Prophets are meant to speak truth into our lives. And that truth can be about our jobs, it can be about our morals, it can be about our relationships or our finances. And Jesus is a prophet. He can speak truth, real truth, into our lives. But there's another thing I want us to notice here. Jesus isn't just a prophet. Jesus had to throw his own parade. Jesus had to pay the whole thing. Jesus had to ask somebody for a float. Usually in parades, if you've ever thrown one, maybe the front will throw one, you have to put in the money, put in the time, and maybe somebody sponsors you. Maybe you get Verizon or T-Mobile. I don't know if that's going to happen with the front. I can't promise that. But they'll sponsor you. They'll pay for the float. Jesus has to ask somebody for a donkey. And notice that its owners, this animal is multiple use. It's owned by multiple people who can't afford their own colt and their own donkey and don't have the time to break it in. Jesus is sympathizing with the poor. He's sympathizing with the least of these. He's saying, I need help so people can see who I am. I need your help. I'm going to speak truth in your life so people can see who I am. And the third thing, Jesus' saddle is not made of this fine leather. It's not made of good burlap or purple cloth. It's shirts of his believers and his disciples. Other people put Jesus on a pedestal so other people can see who Jesus is. Jesus isn't a domineering prophet. He's not yelling at you. He's not trying to convict you. He will say things that are convicting, but it's to bring more grace. And when Jesus speaks to us as a humble prophet, we reveal more about who Jesus is. Jesus says, hey, I need a colt, and I need this colt, so people can see who I am. I need your cloaks as a saddle, so people can see that I'm just as poor as you. When we listen to what Jesus has for us, and when we listen to a true prophecy, our lives will reveal more of who Jesus is, not less. So correct any ideas if you have of a bad boss or a horrible conflict or a bad coworker or a bad professor trying to speak truth into your life. That truth can reveal who Jesus is, and some of it cannot. That's why it hurts so much. Jesus is a humble prophet. But Jesus' parade doesn't only reveal that he's a humble prophet, it reveals two more things. As he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. When he came near the place where the road goes down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. We have a lot of celebrities in our culture. Kanye is one of my favorite. Gene Simmons is probably still one of my favorite. And we treat them as kings, right? Beyonce, the pop superstar, is called the queen bee, right? These people are kings that have had a lot of financial success, had a lot of material success, and they've proven to the culture around them that they deserve to be worshiped and honored for their achievements. Jesus is king. Jesus is a king, according to his disciples. The whole crowd cries out, peace in heaven, glory in the highest. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. That's from Psalm 118:26. It was usually sang at Passover when there was an entry into Jerusalem. But peace in heaven and glory on the highest, that's said in Luke 2. What's happening in Luke 2 is now being fulfilled in Luke 19. Jesus is king. And people were laying down their cloths, once again revealing that humility. There's no palm branches here. People couldn't just rip off a palm branch, rip off a piece of sagebrush, and lay it down for the donkey. Jesus has a red carpet, and that red carpet is made up of poor people's clothing in burlap sacks. Jesus is a humble king, just as he's a humble prophet. And what they're proclaiming when they're laying stuff down is what people proclaimed in 2 Kings 9:13 when they said Jehu is king. Everybody around is realizing that Jesus is king. I love that the disciples begin to joyfully praise God in loud voices. Every miracle they've seen up until this point, it's clicking now. Because Jesus is riding in on a donkey. He's riding in on a colt. In other cultures, or in this culture, in Roman culture, if you rode it on a horse, military might and power, prowess, captivity, domination. When you ride in on a donkey or when you ride in on a colt, peace. He's bringing peace. Jesus is a peaceful king. But what's interesting is near the end of this section, the Pharisees reject him and say, hey, tell your disciples to shut up. This hasn't happened before in Luke. It's always been the Pharisees telling the disciples to tell Jesus to shut up. This time it's them telling Jesus to tell the disciples to shut up. The disciples are starting to recognize the kingdom prowess of Jesus. And what I love about Jesus is that Beyonce or Kanye or whatever president is your favorite in the past 20 years, whatever author is your favorite, these people are accepted by our culture, and they're accepted by other powers and authorities in our culture. Jesus is a rejected king. He's the rejected king. Our king is not accepted by the powers and prowess, by the privileged, but he's accepted by the poor and humble and people that have seen him move in their lives. Jesus is our rejected king. So how does Jesus respond to the Pharisees? He says, if I tell them to keep quiet, the stones will cry out. He's quoting Habakkuk 2:11, where Habakkuk is saying, the privileged are oppressing the poor, and if they oppress the poor, then the stones will cry out because there's so much injustice happening. When people oppress our voices, when we're recognizing the true king, the stones will cry out. Jesus is our rejected king. And what does this mean that we serve a rejected king? It means that we, as Jesus' followers, don't have to worry about being accepted. We don't have to worry about a promotion. We don't have to worry about approval. We don't have to worry about people pleasing or trying to get a job or trying to get a major, trying to get the grades or trying to please our parents. We should do all of these things. These are good things that the kingdom of heaven has for us, but we're already accepted by Jesus because Jesus was rejected by the world. So whenever you're rejected by the world because you fall short of their expectations or your own expectations, know that Jesus was rejected by the ruling class and the rulers above him. So Jesus is a humble prophet, a rejected king, but what else is he? What I think is really interesting about this parade and about this triumphal entry is that Jesus doesn't have to throw one. He doesn't have to have a parade. He could have walked into Jerusalem, a couple of people, which he's going to do right after this. He's going to flip some tables, right? He could have walked in, people off, and then died on the cross, right? Died on the cross and been crucified. That's what happens next week. Sorry, shocker. We're on Friday. I know, super spoiler, my bad. Jesus doesn't have to throw a parade. He doesn't have to do any of this. And I think that's so beautiful. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. You know what people don't do in parades? They don't cry. They don't cry. In Jesus' parade, when people can't see who he is, his heart breaks. Why is Jesus crying? Because the world so desperately wants. They don't want better cell phone plans. We don't want more dumb cartoons that are ultimately going to make our kids super dumb. I watched way too much SpongeBob, and that's why I had such a low ACT score. Convinced of it. Kelly did it. That's why she's smarter than me. The world doesn't want these things. The world doesn't want more people in captive when Julius Caesar enslaved them. The world wants peace. They want wholeness. They want rest. And Jesus is a peace bringer. What kind of peace is he bringing? Well, he's bringing a sickly donkey who's never been broken. He's riding in on a saddle from his disciples. What peace could he be bringing? He's bringing himself. Jesus is the peace bringer. He's not bringing more money. That will happen if you follow Jesus. Maybe it won't. Can't promise that. Jesus isn't bringing smiling faces. He's bringing peace to earth. He's bringing a new kingdom that won't enslave Gaul, that won't enslave Macedonia, that won't try to sell you something and won't try to make you look at something. He's bringing peace to our world and to our lives. And Jesus is weeping. Because not everyone wants this peace. It's true, we know this. Some people love war. Some people love violence. Some people love their greed. Some people, I hate to say this, love people-pleasing. They know it's wrong, they know it's not good, but they love people-pleasing. They love these addictive substances and habits that they want to stick to. The Pharisees love their way of life, even if it hurts them. They don't want to see Jesus as king, and they don't want to see Jesus as the peace bringer. Because people couldn't see him as king and didn't want to see him as king, they could no longer see him. When we don't want to see Jesus, when we don't want to see peace, we don't get any peace. They rejected the Messiah, and like Robin said, I don't have that cool water thing. I'm still wondering how that worked. When they rejected the Messiah, there are consequences. When Jesus says no stone will be left unturned, he could be referring to the siege of Titus in the future, but I also think it's revealing Jesus' heart. If you don't want peace to come to you, your heart will be broken, and there will be a siege on your heart. And it's not only going to affect you, parents, it's going to affect your children if you don't want peace. And I want to be the first to apologize if this message is harsh, but I also want to be the first to say that Jesus' heart breaks when we refuse to accept peace. And if you feel like you were there, I have some good news for you, because Jesus isn't only a peace bringer, he's a peace bringer who brings second chances. That's why Jesus is throwing this parade in the first place, right? He ends the verse, the days will come, I'll turn over these walls because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. Jesus is bringing second chances. Jesus is saying, here's your chance to see me again. I've done all these miracles all up and down Israel, right? In Galilee, in Cappadocia, but now I'm coming to Jerusalem on a donkey. It lines up with Zechariah 9:9. You know the Psalms. Here's your chance to see me as king. And guess what? I'm not going to make you do anything. I'm not going to enslave you. I'm not going to make you give money to me. Lay down your cloak. Help me. I'm the humble prophet. I'm your rejected king. I'm the peace bringer who brings second chances. This is what Jesus wants for us. This is who Jesus is. The parade gives us one more chance to respond to the king. And this parade, by any cultural standard, absolutely sucks. Everybody was like, oh, done. A few clothes in the road, a borrowed donkey, and a king who would die next week. This isn't our kind of a parade, but it's Jesus's, and it gives us a chance to respond. I'm going to call the worship team back up. My question for the congregation is, what do you struggle to see Jesus as? Jesus' parade doesn't only give us one more chance to respond, but it gives us a chance to see who he really is. So do you struggle with seeing Jesus as the humble prophet? Do you not like having truth spoken into your life? Do you not like knowing that you're right or wrong, good or bad? Maybe somebody has spoken poor truth into your life and it went poorly. Do you not like seeing Jesus as a humble prophet? Can I remind you that he's humble and it's for your good? It's not for his gain. Maybe you don't like seeing Jesus as the rejected king. Maybe you would rather follow somebody who is a winner. Maybe you'd rather follow a celebrity or Jeff Bezos, somebody who's made a lot of money. Can I tell you that you're going to get rejected in your life, and it's good to follow a rejected king? Last, do you struggle with seeing Jesus as the peace bringer who brings second chances because you feel like you've been given too many second chances and you're being stuck in a guilt and shame trap? Or do you feel like Jesus is giving those other people too many second chances and Jesus needs to bring justice and pain and retribution? Can I remind you that this was Jesus' last walk into Jerusalem before he died on the cross? Jesus is always a God of second, third, fourth, and fifth chances, even when we don't like it. My prayer is that we can all see Jesus for who he really is. The humble prophet who speaks truth, the rejected king who rules the rejected people, and the peace bringer who continuously brings us peace and second chances. Amen.